start our major portion of our program right now. Our first honorary is a guy that I've known for as many years I've been in the fight game, which is 50 plus. I saw many of his fights at the Olympic Auditorium in the Hollywood Legion Stadium. He started out as an amateur. Well, he was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was reared in East Los Angeles, started boxing as an amateur when he was just 12 years old. He had 248 amateur fights, winning almost all of them. He turned pro at the age of 15. His first fight was September 20th, 1945 in Las Vegas, and I presume it was in Las Vegas because they weren't too strict on the age in those days. He was 15 years old. He stopped a fellow that later became a pretty fair fighter around here, Burt White. His next fight in Las Vegas was against a fellow that became a great fighter around here, Art Aragon. And he was 15 years old, and he lost a 6-round decision to Art Aragon. 2 weeks later, they had a rematch in Las Vegas, and this time he beat Art. Then he turned pro here in Los Angeles, still underage at 16. But I guess they weren't too strict in those days. He was managed by the legendary George Parnassus, and his stablemate was the famous Enrique Bolaños. One of his early fights, and I remember well, I believe it was at Wrigley Field, and it was a supporting bout. I think it was on maybe Bolaños and Ike Williams' card. And this, or it was either Bolaños and John Thomas, I'm not quite sure, but I have two guys here that can fill me in, or fill us in. It was just a 6-round fight, but it had so much interest that people were writing so much about this fight. And this was a match between Fabela Chavez and Jackie McCoy. Jackie, I don't think, wants to remember the result. Fabela won it by a knockout. But Jackie went on to have a great career, and a greater career as a manager, managing 5 or 6 world champions. Fabela fought the best in the 40s and the 50s. He fought Willie Pep, national TV, losing a decision, but that certainly was no disgrace. He beat 2 world champions, Harold Dade and Laura Salas. He also beat some pretty good fighters like Alfredo Escobar, Mario Trigo, and Bobby Jackson. Those of you who were around in the 40s and 50s at the Olympic, you would remember these fellas. They were great little fighters. After a very lengthy and colorful career, Fabela retired, and the last few years he's been running a very successful youth boxing program in the city of Carson. And at this time, I would like them to stand up and say a few words. Fabulous Fabela Chavez.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Golden State Association, its members, its peers, for this honor. I want to thank everyone for showing up, and it's an honor for me to be in a category with a gentleman like Cannonball Green. Yeah, that's my man. He's always been. The first time we met was in the 40s when he was training Jackie Wilson. And I always loved this man for the simple reason that he's the one that always advised me in the right way. But I lost track with him when Jackie died. But to me, he was a jewel, and I respect this man very, very much. Thank you.
Our next honorary is a fellow who has been on the Los Angeles, Southern California scene for many, many years. He's originally from St. Louis. He was a fireman and a small farmer in his early years. He was granted a referee's license in Missouri in 1941 and worked many important fights in St. Louis involving fighters like Sonny Liston, Ray Robinson, Ezra Charles, Sandy Sadler, Archie Moore, etc. His career as a referee took off when he moved to California. He joined a fraternity of referees and judges that included Mushy Callahan, George Latka, Tommy Hart, Charlie Randolph, John Thomas, Joe Stone, Jimmy Wilson, Frankie Van, and Dynamite Jackson. Dick Young served as president of the Southern California Referees Association for 12 consecutive years. He refereed many bouts at the Forum and the Olympic Auditorium involving Jimmy Carter, Raul Rojas, Carlos Ortiz, Lou Filippo, Jose Napoles, Emil Griffith, Ruben Oliveras, Alexis Arguello, and on and on. The fight with Ortiz and Lou Filippo was probably his most famous, yet not on a worldwide scale. That's the one where Lou got hit after the bell and at first was awarded the fight, and then later it was called a no decision. Dick Young has probably worked, I don't know, 300 or 400, 500 world title fights. At 81, he's still going strong, working as a judge. He retired as a fire supervisor for Rockwell out in Chatsworth. He's enjoying his family, his grandchildren, and I'm proud to call him a friend of mine. Dick Young, please come up.
You know, a boxing referee or judge is like any other professional official, whether it's baseball, football, regardless. You want to work the ultimate title matches, the fights and all. And I've done that. I've been very fortunate. I'd like to correct something here. It sounded so good when Don said that I've refereed over 300 World Championship fights. In reality, it's only 81. And there's several things that I'd like to say at this time. I have the opportunity, and if you'll bear with me, please. First off, I'd like to introduce my daughter, who is here representing her mother, my wife, who is very, very ill with Alzheimer's disease. And Sue, stand up, honey. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'd like to say, if you just give me a moment here. The babyface assassin is here, and Don talked about him, spoke about him. And I'd like to tell you something that happened to me with this individual at the Olympic Auditorium years ago. I refereed this main event, and his fighter lost a close decision in a real good fight. I voted against his fighter. At the end of the fight, when I raised the winner's hand, this manager came over to me, and with this smile on his face, he proceeded to chew me up and down. And I know that the building was packed, and I know everybody in that building thought, gee, what a nice guy he is. His fighter just lost, and he's over there complimenting the referee on what a good job he did. I lost more blood, if words can make you bleed. I lost more blood at that time than all the fighters on that whole program that night. And the baby assassin that night was my dear friend, Jackie McCoy. Yeah. One other thing I'd like to say, I've been very, very fortunate since I've come to California from St. Louis. My career would never have progressed to this point where I could stand up and annoy you people. And with all of the opportunities that I've had, I've been to 14 countries worldwide, stayed in the finest of hotels, had the finest of meals. Everything was wonderful. I've been very fortunate. But it's not a path that's strewn with rose petals. California boxing has had 2 riots since 1955, one at the Hollywood Legion and one at the Forum. Yes, but I was a judge at that, but I refereed these other 2 fights. So, see, I've had a rocky road too. It hasn't been perfect, but I thank you, I appreciate it, and from the bottom of my heart, thank everyone who has come here and honored me. Thank you.
Our next honoree is a local product. In fact, he attended same high school as my daughter's, North Hollywood High School. I remember hearing about this young man. He was a teenage phenomenon. He was licking everybody in all the gyms and amateur bouts. And in 1973, the highlight of his amateur career was he won the National AAU Lightweight Championship, and he defeated a pretty fair boxer by the name of Sugar Ray Leonard, one of the few to ever beat Sugar Ray Leonard, who was, of course, Olympic champion and several times world champion. He turned pro in 1974, defeating Victor Abraham, who was a pretty good local boy, in his first pro fight. He ran a string of 27 straight wins before losing to the very capable Vicente Saldivar of Mexico. He defeated top fighters like Jose Palacios, Ray Lampkin, Romero Bolaños, Turi Pineda, among others. I think the highlight of his professional career was a fight he didn't win, but I and many others thought he won it. It was when he fought Pepino Cuevas for the welterweight title in 1979. In those days, they fought 15 rounds. He went 15 rounds with Cuevas, who was a devastating puncher. Cuevas couldn't put him down, had all sorts of trouble with him, but the decision went to Cuevas. He got a second chance at the welterweight title, but he was done in by cuts, losing to Thomas Hearns, another pretty fair fighter, in 1981. He retired. He works as a screenwriter, has a promising career, also as a personal bodyguard, and he was also a hero about 2 years ago in North Hollywood. There was a hold-up attempt at a restaurant. He exchanged gunfire with a trio of bandits, chased them out of the restaurant, the parking lot, wounded one of them, and they caught him when they were taking the wounded man to the hospital. He's been a friend of mine for many years, and I'd like to bring him up, Randy Shields.
All right, well, I got the cue from Don to talk as long as I want, so I guess they have to buy a little bit of time here. Thing is just keeping the mic straight. I had a long career. I think something to do with every manager and fighter in here, with Jackie McCoy, with every fighter, with me and Andy Doc Price almost fought a couple of times. everybody in here has a story to tell. I have about 1,000,001. But I thought I'd just clarify a couple of stories that have gone awry here and there. And the boxing game is a very serious game. Everybody takes it very serious, and you get in there, you hit people, they knock them out, you win, it's very serious. But there was a lot of comedy involved with my career. And I think one of the biggest comedies was my dad. I mean, if anybody ever knew my dad, it's like anywhere we would go, as Don Frazier was mentioning as an amateur, the only words would utter out of my dad's mouth, yeah, how you doing? You want to box? He can go to, the spaghetti factory. He can go to 4 and 20 in North Hollywood, whatever. You meet somebody, hey, you want to box? Jackie, I think you, and everybody is here has heard my dad at least say that at least once. So there's a lot of things that my dad would do. He's very gruff and very rough. Some of you do know and don't know. There was one incident that happened at the Main Street Gym where I was 15 years old, and I just got through sparring with Oscar Shotgun Alvarado, who was the world champion at that time. And went 8 rounds with him, and he didn't want to go anymore, and I wanted to go more and whatever. So I hop on the bag, and there's this ex-fighter selling Shackley health products to my dad, and he's been trying to push him, the whole 9 yards with my dad. All of a sudden he starts pushing my dad, and all of a sudden my dad just goes, "Arr!" Starts yelling, "Arr!" He goes, "Whack!" Hits him with the left hook. The guy drops. The whole Main Street Gym stops. Everybody stops sparring. They all just stop and stare. You could hear a pin drop. And I hear people say about my dad, they come up to me and said, I went to one of your fights at the Olympic Auditorium. And I said, yeah, which one? And he said, well, I don't know, but there was a riot after the fight. Well, that was about like 98% of the fights I had at the Olympic. And I said, how else would you, what did the guy look like? Well, he was Hispanic. Well, okay, that's about 95% of the fighters that fought at the Olympic. And I said, any other clues? And he says, yeah, well, your dad got into a fight after the fight. And I said, well, that was 100% of the fights that I had at the fight. So we never found out which fight it was that he went and saw, but I'm always getting that all the time, that they were at a fight that my dad got into a fight at. Didn't matter whether I was fighting or not, my dad would be fighting. So there was one time up in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and I fought Foster Frazier, something like that, Foster Freeze, whatever. But he was about number 12 in the world at the time, and there's this guy in the 3rd row, this big white guy, that kept going, "Ah, Shields, you're a bum," yelling out, "Rah!" So my dad kept looking around. Right in the middle of the introductions, my dad jumps out of the ring. Not goes down the aisle, but he goes right in the middle of the aisle, and she starts taking people and just throwing them left and right to get to this guy. And I had to have about 3 of my friends went and interceded and grabbed the guy. I said, "I'm gonna kick your," after the fight. And the guy left, luckily. So, but there's a lot of stories that a lot of fighters, a lot of people have. I even have a few about a few referees. But but I thought I'd clarify one thing about going into my amateur career, what led me into fighting Sugar Ray Leonard. And it had to do when I was just about to turn 17, and I went to a smoker down in LA. And there was a manager there. How many people know Billy Mitchell? Okay. Billy Mitchell's a little bit touched, but we all know that. He's a little bit crazy. But he was there with 4, 5, 6 fighters, and there was nobody my weight to fight. And I think, as you all know, that when I was 130 pounds, I'd be boxing with heavyweights. Didn't matter to me. My dad just threw me in with everybody. And this was no exception. There was nobody to fight. I don't even forget who the promoter was, but there was a guy there that was about 154, 155 pounds, and my dad was like, you want a box? Just about that. And the promoter says, no, he's too heavy. He's like, almost 30 pounds heavier than your fight. I said, I don't care, put him in there. So we fought. I knocked him out in the second round, and it was Billy Mitchell's fighter, and Billy goes, well, I have a boy that can knock him out, kick his butt, and all this stuff, and he was a light heavyweight, so I went in and fought him, same day, knocked him out in the second round. Billy Mitchell had this heavyweight. He said, well, you can't beat him, Billy Mitchell was getting crazy, and my dad, in turn, would get crazy too. So I stopped him in the third round. Basically, I just went to the belly, he got tired, he fell, It's not like I went and knocked him out. He wore himself out. So it set up the thing where Billy Mitchell, quote unquote, he said, well, I've got a Black Panther that's going to jump out of the tree and tear your boy apart. I said, bring him on. They're both screaming and yelling at each other on each side of the ring. They're just yelling and screaming at each other. My dad loved that. Billy loved that. I'm just going, I want to go home. So it works up that I'm supposed to fight this big Black Panther, and he was probably one of my toughest fights I've ever had. And unfortunately, he didn't go anywhere after we fought. He kind of got disheartened or whatever. But it worked up into the Diamond Belt. This was, I believe, in '72. The Diamond Belt going, in December. I knocked out all my opponents. As a lightweight, maybe one or two people went the distance with me as a lightweight. I knocked everybody out. And this kid, his older brother was Thurman Durden, who was like #2 in the world as a middleweight. And this kid that I went up against was named Claude Durden. I don't know, does anybody remember Claude Durden as an amateur? Claude Durden had muscle on top of muscle on top of muscle. And so we're building up to this fight where I'm a lightweight. I'm basically about 128 pounds, to 130. I fluctuate right in there. So, and I think lightweight in the amateurs goes up to 132. And so we're building up to fight each other in the finals of the Diamond Belt. He's going, I'm going, he's going. He's winning all his fights by knockout. I'm winning all my fights by knockout. We get to the Olympic Auditorium the night of the finals. We walk up to the commissioner and we say, okay, when's our fight? Well, you're fighting so-and-so and so, Joe Blow over there, in the last fight or something. And my dad said, what? What do you mean? Arr! He starts yelling and screaming, and then Billy Mitchell comes up, what? We all thought that we were going to fight each other. He was a junior welterweight, and I was a lightweight. Not even in the same class, and for all these months, we're building up to fight each other. Nobody had a clue to what was going on. We're watching him fight, he's watching me fight. I'm a lightweight, he's a junior welterweight. Nobody put two and two together. So my opponent said, there's no way, he wasn't going to fight me, so they pulled out. Claude Durden's fighter pulled out, so we both won by forfeit. My dad said, well, let him fight him. He said, well, you can't do that. He's in an upper division. He's outweighs him. You can't do that. It exceeds over 10 pounds. I don't care. I want him to fight. So he said, well, you got to sign some papers. So we signed some papers and we fought. And they saved it for the last fight of the night. And I think it was about the only time that I've seen the Olympic Auditorium to where everybody was standing all 3 rounds and never sat down. And they showered the ring with like close to $300 worth of money afterwards. It was a toe-to-toe battle. Billy Mitchell, I heard, was slapping Claude Durden in the face and said, what are you doing, letting that kid beat you? And I've had more respect for Claude Durden, and I was really saddened to know that he kind of gave it up for a while, then came back, then gave it up, and I always think about what's happened to him. But anyway, because of that, I could never find a good lightweight fighter to fight. I stayed junior welterweight, even though I was like 130 pounds, and I had to be over 132 to fight junior welterweight. So I went and won the Golden Gloves, won the AAU, all as a junior welterweight. And that's where Leonard and Roosevelt Green and John Staggs and all the big fighters were, was as a junior welterweight. That's where Sugar Ray Seals won the Olympics was in junior welterweight. So I was a junior welterweight. And easing up into the finals, I fought all three favorites, which is John Staggs, who won all his fights by knockout. I beat him. Roosevelt Green, who was the backup man in the 72 Olympics, I knocked him out. And then it was me and Leonard. Now, the thing that people don't know about me and Leonard is that we're from the same hometown. So we're both from Washington, D.C. All my cousins and uncles are from Washington, and they're shaking like, you're gonna fight Ray? You know? I mean, they're scared to death for me. And I'm going, no big deal. You know, it's to any fighter around here, a fight's a fight. You know, so to me, it was a fight's a fight. And, you know, I got the best of him. You know, I think the third round is actually what pulled it out for me. Is I hit him, he lost his mouthpiece, and I think that really went against him in that fight. But it was a close fight. It was a tough fight. The hardest I've ever been hit was when we fought as a pro. But that's the referee story that, you know, went to. But anyway, that's how I made junior welterweight. And even though I was still a lightweight, when I fought John Staggs in the quarterfinals, I dropped down 125 pounds. And I was weighed in with all my clothes on, still didn't make the weight. Had to pick up a pair of boots to make, I think it was 135. Yeah, 135 I had to make just with a pair of boots on, so I almost didn't make the weight. But then that set up the fight for when we fought in 1978, when I fought Leonard as a pro. And I fought him in between his ABC contracts, and it was a tough fight. I fought him in Baltimore in his hometown. It's a big Sugar Ray Leonard production, and they filmed the fight to sell to ABC, which nobody's ever seen. So I have a lot of people saying I saw the Sugar Ray Leonard fight, and nobody's ever seen it. So if you weren't there, you didn't see it. It was one of the other fights. But in that Sugar Ray Leonard fight is a lot of people have, a lot of referees that have done something to them in a fight here and there. They've, you know, in the Cuevas fight, you know, like every other minute, you know, Cuevas hit me in the, you know, way low, almost in the thighs. And the referee, back up, you know, and he warned me for doing something, you know. So, I mean, everybody's had a referee story. And in the Sugar Ray Leonard fight was no exception. Every time the referee would come in to break us, Leonard would throw a wild left hook. And I just barely miss every single, he never hit me. But the referee would never warn him for hitting after, now, you know, when the referee says break and he's got a hand on his breaking us, Leonard would try to hit me. And so, I mean, this gets a little tiresome if you're a fighter and you know. I mean, when a referee's really against you, it gets you know, old hat quick. Well, in the 9th round, the same thing happened. The referee said break. He touched both our chests and pushed us apart. Leonard threw a wild left hook. The referee stuck his face there and got hit. He flew across the ring, split his eye open. We were both standing there like, well, what do we do now? You know, we didn't know what to do. Finally, the referee gets back up on his feet, staggering. They had to replace the referee. And that was one of the happiest moments of my boxing career. But out of all the referees, I even have, let me tell you, I even have a referee that's here today that actually said that it was hard refereeing or judging my fight because he liked me so much. And I said, you're kidding. You know, I always thought you hated me. And because, I mean, one referee would have it like, you know, 8-1 in favor of me. The other judge would have it like 9-1 in favor of me. And then this one particular referee would have it like something like 6-4 for the other guy. And I said, wow. And he said, well, I always had a hard time, you know, judging and refereeing fighters that I really liked. And I said, well, you must have loved me. So, and I'm sure he knows who that is, but there's no ill grudges about anybody. One of my favorite referees is Dick Young. And one of my favorite pictures was given to me by him with autograph by him that he was refereeing one of my fights, which he refereed many. But as far as the riots, only in those two places, I can name quite a few that I was involved with myself. But anyway, it was nice being here. I really appreciate it. It's nice talking to y'all. I have a million stories. I don't talk about them much, but it's one of those exceptions.
He had Maxie Rosenblum on the floor. As I mentioned earlier, one of his opponents who he fought at the Olympic in the 30s is here Angus Morgan, Dr. Angus Morgan. He has been a legendary trainer of great fighters for over 60 years. He handled the great Jackie Wilson, Clarence Hendry, who was top heavyweight contender, Willie Bean he worked with, Cecil Schoolmaker, Eddie Pace, Big Train Lincoln, and Charlie Powell. I'd like to bring up James Cannonball Green. And I'd like to have a fellow that's known Cannonball at least 60 years, a great lightweight himself, George Latka.
I wouldn't talk to him. You love him. Yeah, but I won't talk to him. You love him. But I won't talk to him. Shut up. Anyway, Don must have been drinking something tonight. Because about 5 o'clock this afternoon, he calls me, says, what do you know about Cannonball? I said, what do you mean? You know as much as I do. I said, you got a lot of books at home. Go ahead and look it up. He said, well, I can't find nothing. I said, what the hell are you calling me so late for? He said, well, I know you got a lot of books over there. So, it's true. We have about 15 volumes. So it started at volume 1. I went through volume 1 to 19. Nothing about Cannonball. All of a sudden, I had a little note on my desk that he told me, he says, hey, but he whipped the great, he had a draw with the great Maxie Rosenblum. I said, he did? Oh, well, I got something to work with. So I proceeded to work another hour trying to find out who the hell he beat. And I was astounded. I knew I had to come up with something. And look at the guys that this guy knocked out. First, well, I'm a little bit afraid to say this, but I'm going to anyhow. Oh, God. Cannonball, you really were vicious. The first guy he knocked out was Willie Bean. Oh, and that's not at all. The second guy he knocked out was Clarence Henry. And I hate to tell you this, but there was a little bantamweight that weighed 118 pounds, and he knocked him out. He was Cecil Shoemaker. Cannonball, you're something else. Another bantamweight you knocked out, Eddie Pace, you devil. And the last one I couldn't believe, because this guy got me in trouble years ago. He knocked out Big Train Lincoln. Now, I want to ask you, is there anybody here that works for Budweiser? Nobody? Then I'm safe. I want you all to stand up. And at the count of 3, I want you all to say, we love you, man. Up, up, up. Come on. Get up. At the count of 3, we love you, man. 1, 2, 3. We love you, man.
Thank you for coming. We'll see you next year. That concludes our program.
Well, most people knew me as a welterweight. And I fought 6 world champions as a welterweight. But my career started as a lightweight. My first year of fighting, I had 21 pro fights. I had 6 6-round fights, 2 8-round fights, and the rest were 10-round main events. By the time I was 19, I was #1 in the world when I fought Terry Fury, the Pineda, and quite a few other ones. I had 6 title bouts scheduled, and they all fell through. So that's when I started moving up. As a junior welterweight, I made #1 in the world. Then as a junior welterweight, I got a welterweight title shot against Pepino Cuevas. Then that started all the champions that I started fighting, like Hearns and Leonard, Benitez, you know, and a few other ones. And McCory, it goes on and on. And I ended my career in 1984, happily, pretty much satisfied. What plagued my career was a lot of injuries, something that I don't wish on anybody. But it was a fun career. I had a good time. I traveled, saw the sights, traveled the world, had a good time, and I don't have any regrets. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a great bout together. I knew he was a hell of a fighter, so I was scared to death, but I hit him with a left hook on the chin in the second round, and he fell, and the referee started to count, and then the referee stopped at 3, and I got scared. Why did he stop at 3? Then he got up and he hit me on the chin, and I never got up.
I got abducted. I got abducted. But a hell of a man right here.
Anyway,
he's a really good guy in person, and as a fighter, he was a better fighter than he is in person, though. You know?
thanks an awful lot. You made me right.
But he's a wonderful guy. I've been knowing him for a long time. I love him, just like a brother. This is what you call but I don't know, look at this color. I don't know, isn't it? But what's the difference in this color and my color? Huh? We about the same.